What's up, Hokie Nation? And welcome into episode 19 of Talking with Teel, presented by State Farm. Virginia Tech has wrapped up its transfer portal class. Duke is suing its ACC champion quarterback in Darian Mensah, and Virginia Tech is positioning itself for the NCAA tournament. All that and much more coming up on this edition of Talking with Teel, which starts right now. And we record on Thursday, January 22nd, 2026 from the Tech Solutions studio at the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Carter Hill. To my left is our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. Across the way is our managing editor, Mr. David Cunningham. Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing behind the scenes. And as always, we are thrilled to be joined by the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel. Teel, how are you? Good to see you.
Gentlemen, good morning. Just bracing for what the weekend may bring.
Oh my gosh. Let's kick off with the Hokies in basketball because Virginia Tech, they closed out a tight one last night, 76-74 over Syracuse, a quad one victory for Virginia Tech. Your overall thoughts up in the Dome, Teel?
Well, I looked at the net this morning, guys, and for the first time this season, the Hokies are in the top 50. And barely, but number 49, obviously a good trend line for Tech. And I checked also this morning on my friend Patrick Stevens, who I think is the best bracketologist out there. And he put his first projections online at the Washington Post yesterday. And he had the Hokies as a 10 seed, starting off in Philadelphia against 7 seed Wisconsin.
Oh, Virginia Tech
injected into Andy Bitter's veins right now.
I don't know. Virginia Tech played Wisconsin once before that buzz year. Or no, one of the first buzz years.
17, yeah, up in Buffalo.
Yeah, and I was like, when that matchup was set, I'm like, sorry, Hokies fans, this is where I leave you. And a bunch of like, we didn't want to do anyway. Get out of here. It's like, no, I don't need that headache again.
If you look at a lot of, you look at a bracket matrix, which compiles like 80-something different bracketologies, and they had the Hokies basically as the first team out. Tech was in like 41 of like the 84 brackets as of yesterday, and this morning, the majority of them have moved Virginia Tech into the field. Virginia Tech does not make it easy on its fans, that's for certain.
No, I was gonna say Virginia Tech. This sounds like they like. Hey, Virginia Tech's in a great spot, really comfortable, has a lead here, being in the tournament field. Do you feel comfortable about them holding on to that at this point?
Not quite, but it's so weird because they've played well for a lot of stretches of the game, and I thought their second half, for the most part, was really, really good. And then it gets down to the final minute and a half, 2 minutes of games, and they just do some crazy things. I mean, Mike Young said it after the game on the Virginia Tech Sports Network after the game. Mike Young said, quote, I've got some really smart people. I've got a really high IQ basketball team, and we do some of the dumbest daggone things. That just infuriates me. And I think that accurately describes how the Hokies try to close out games.
Yeah,
they did successfully yesterday, but it gets a little rough there at the end.
If Lawal doesn't grab that rebound,
yeah,
after Abdallah's, like guaranteed Syracuse is tying the game up with the 3. Like just guaranteed at that point. Yeah. I mean, they're up 9 with a minute 40 left. And I look at the handy dandy ESPN win probability chart here. 97.9. It's like, this feels familiar. I don't know. There's just something about this team. It gets down to the stretch like that. They just like lose all, common sense about going about plays. And thank goodness they held on in this one, because I don't know if you could suffer another loss like that in a devastating fashion and rebound. But, credit to them. They've had a couple like that this year, and they've bounced back, and they're in a pretty good position in the league.
Guys, in the last 77 seconds last night, Virginia Tech committed 3 of its 10 turnovers for the night and fouled a 3-point shooter.
Well, and a lot of that stuff, I was actually texting with my dad because I said, I feel like growing up in youth basketball, you learn don't pass the ball to the corner.
Yeah.
And the Hokies did it twice and turned it over twice after doing it at SMU and turning it over. and their press break continues to be a thing of progress, I guess. It's so interesting because they get into these situations where they were up 9 after 2 Hammond free throws with like 1:04 left.
They're up 8 with 45 seconds left.
Yeah, and Syracuse hits 3, Hokies come down, hit 2 free throws, but then they foul a 3-point shooter, as Andy said, and it's just one thing after another. But I will say they were down 7 at halftime. And they really flipped the game on its head, and that's a big win. I think people up in Syracuse, I mean, they're calling for Red Autry's head right now. On the other side, I think the Hokies feel okay about their NCAA tournament chances. Obviously not set in stone, but I think you know they're in the field today. I think a lot of opportunities left in front of them, and if they can kind of take care of business here or there, if they can beat a Duke at home, I mean, I think their resume should only go up.
That was a quad 1 win?
It was.
As of now, they're 75 in the net. That's the last possible spot they can be.
So you have to root for Syracuse to be good for the rest of the season.
Correct.
To make that more good.
Correct. So to that point, is this the beginning of the end for Red Autry, a former Virginia Tech assistant up in Syracuse, do you think?
Year 3 or year 4?
Year 3.
3. Might be a little premature, but Syracuse is undergoing regime change. You know, Kent Severud is moving on to the University of Michigan. And maybe the president will have different ideas. I think there are a lot of ACC coaches who are feeling the heat, longer tenured ones than Red Autry. You look at Earl Grant at Boston College, Jeff Capel at Pitt, Steve Forbes at Wake Forest. They need to author some impressive stretch runs here, or it could be a bleak early March for the ACC coaching ranks. But David, you mentioned how they flipped it on its head in the second half after being down 7 at intermission. I thought one of the key things was William Kyle, Syracuse's big, was 5 for 6 for 10 points in the first half. He ended the game 5 of 6 for 10 points. The Hokies didn't allow him a shot in the second half, which to me was a big part of the defensive turnover.
Yeah, and I thought the way the Hokies defended on the inside, and they did a lot of that, keep in mind, with Monty Hansberry and Christian Gerdak on the bench with 4 fouls. I thought the Hokies were they kind of disrupted anything Syracuse wanted to do by just taking the ball to the rim and getting fouled over and over and over. They shot 33 free throws in the second half. And I mean, that's just an impressive number in itself for the game, and they shot that in 20 minutes of basketball. Syracuse had 20 fouls in as many minutes. But I thought the way that they kind of limited Kyle and limited Donnie Freeman in the second half, I mean, Syracuse didn't really have many runs at all. And I thought you saw the Hokies defense come alive that after a first half where they gave up 7 threes to a team that only averages 7 threes per game.
Yes, I would agree. Teel, we've gotten these guys' thoughts on this already, but I do want to give you an opportunity to comment on it. Virginia Tech's portal class is complete. The Hokies have added 27 guys to the roster. What is your overall take on what Virginia Tech did in the transfer portal?
I think it's about the number you would have expected. And to, at the risk of redundancy, what you guys have talked about is among that group, very few one and dones. We're talking about a majority of the group having multiple seasons of eligibility remaining. Doesn't guarantee that they'll stick around Blacksburg for all those seasons, but they would have that option. And they picked up the edge rusher late from Colorado the other day. Excuse me for not knowing the name off the top of his head, but they needed that after the Baylor kid had to decommit. So that really helps. It looks like they got some help on the offensive line. with dudes from Oklahoma and Ohio State. That helps. And I think we've even talked about Keyshawn Brown. And you talk about closing a season strong. In the Sun Bowl against Arizona State, that dude went for 10, 175, and 2 touchdowns, including the game winner in the last minute. I'll be interested to ask Fontel Mines at some point if that performance influenced Virginia Tech's interest in the young man or if he was already on their radar.
And they added a long snapper we didn't even know
Yes.
about.
Yes, they did.
Capper. What a name. Capper the long snapper.
Capper the long snapper.
The
Hopefully
need for deed. Like, I mean, there's so many ways that we can go with this thing. That's an awesome name. I'm glad they added him.
hopefully putting a capper on the transfer portal class too, David.
Yeah, well, maybe. Well, and then Teel mentioned Samuel Okunlola, the Colorado defensive end, and I mean he's a pretty under the radar commitment, very late, but he started his career at Pitt. He was very productive at Pitt and Colorado. Was hurt last season, but I mean I think very like for like replacement for Morgan. Maybe doesn't have the number of years of eligibility because Morgan had 3. Maybe doesn't necessarily have as high of a ceiling, but he's been pretty productive.
He might be more prepared to play now.
Yeah.
And contribute now, which is honestly something I thought they needed at the edge position anyway. So
I'll put you guys on the spot a little bit. We're going to go round table with this
I
one.
think it's going to be Ethan Grunkemeyer.
Yes.
Is that what we're
Ding, ding,
doing?
ding,
Yes. So I'll start with you, Andy, for this one. So Ethan Grunkemeyer, of course, is the starting quarterback for Virginia Tech. We obviously don't know the numbers, but I do think people are going to be curious. So I will ask you guys, if you guys hit a ballpark, how much do you think Virginia Tech is paying Ethan Grunkemeyer to come to Virginia Tech, Andy?
$1 million. I don't know. It's funny money. The figures thrown out there, so I don't know what it was. I think Drones made something like that last year, more than that. It seems like a good ballpark, I guess. I mean, I think it's going to be 7 figures. I think that's what starting quarterbacks go for now. So I'm probably lowballing a little bit, but I'll say $1 million.
I mean, if they're smart, they're doing it like a professional contract where they're paying him like X over like 3 years.
Because those hold up.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see with Darian Mensah. Probably somewhere between 1, maybe 1.2, 1.3. I don't know. God, we don't know the numbers.
Yeah. What about you, Teel?
I would go higher. I'll be, it would be fascinating to see some of these contracts, especially for skill guys, because there's so many measurables. Are there incentives in the deal? In passing yards, touchdown passes, quarterback rating, wins. I mean, who knows? I would think he'd be north of 1.5. Heck, you hear tales of Darian Mensah turning his nose up at $4 million a year from Duke to go to Miami for $6 million. And as Andy said, that's funny money, and who knows what's liar's poker and what's not. But there is a lot of money in the quarterback market right now.
I mentioned the guys that Virginia Tech has brought in. Did more guys return to Virginia Tech than you guys thought were going into the offseason? David, we'll start with you this time.
I think it was about what expected. I mean, we went through on the podcast the other day, we went through kind of all the guys who have left. And I didn't think, besides like Caleb Woodson, most of those guys, maybe Cam Seldon or Isaiah Spencer, there were very few huge impact guys outside of like those 1 or 2. And I think a lot of these guys want a fresh start, and a lot of these guys are from this region and were recruited by James Franklin or someone on the staff to begin with. And it's not like James Franklin completely overhauled the staff, by the way. I mean, he did, but there are also still 3 or 4 Fontel Mines, Matt
Your
Moore.
former head coach is running the defense too.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
there's
still
things.
familiarity. It's not like he completely cleaned house. So I'm not surprised. I think this is kind of about what you expected, and you got to keep some group. I mean, you can't bring in 50 guys unless you're Bill Belichick, and
That worked out well.
Yeah.
Another one.
We'll keep it in the room, Andy. Go ahead.
I'm not surprised. I mean, James Franklin's a pretty charismatic guy. You get in a room with him, and if he wants you to stay, I think he'll convince you to stay. He's pretty, a good talker like that. And I think there's a financial backing now that, they had the money to retain people that they wanted to retain. And does that mean they retained everybody they wanted to? Probably not. I think you look at somebody like Caleb Woodson. I think it would have made sense for him to stay. Pretty good opportunity going to Alabama for him. But if you look at the list of the guys departing versus the guys coming in, a lot of the departure schools that they're going to is like UConn and North Texas, and the schools that are Group of Five or lower power conference schools like that. So I think a lot of it is just for opportunity. So if guys feel like they have an opportunity here, and the coach convinces them of such, then it can't be too surprising that a lot of them chose to stay.
Carter, I think Brent Pride staying on the staff and also Fontel Mines provided James Franklin and his incoming assistants some intel on who they might want to keep. And as Andy obviously mentioned, the money is a big factor here in retention. And maybe in addition to Woodson, I was struck by Ellis's decision to transfer to Virginia, spice up the Commonwealth Cup rivalry a little bit. I thought he had some potential, but I think the net is clearly this is a much better roster than a season ago.
No, you had something, David. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, you got to start somewhere with the building blocks for the roster. And I think Franklin and Pry and the coaching staff identified pretty quickly, hey, we don't have to bring in, they brought in a lot of offensive linemen. We don't have to bring in everyone because there is a Johnny Garrett. There is a Brody Meadows. There is a Kyle Altuner, right? They can build with some of those guys. Same thing on the defensive line. You got a Kamari Copeland back. Right, I think there are solid. For the most part, all the guys that stayed, it's like, yeah, I can see that. And to Andy's point, the money's there, and I mean, I think you've got to start somewhere when kind of building this thing back up, and it makes sense kind of how it all shook out.
To be clear, I love what James Franklin is doing, and obviously, I think he's very, very much upgraded this roster. But I do want to raise a counterpoint, and I'm not trying to be Mr. Negative at all. Don't get me wrong, but I do think it is a fair point to bring up. Virginia Tech did go 3-9 last season, and you're bringing back, I don't know, half the roster from a season ago. Granted, you're bringing back a lot of key contributors that you would like to bring back. But Teel, we'll start with you. Would it be to you concerning in the slightest that Virginia Tech is bringing back half the roster when the Hokies went 3-9 a season ago?
Not particularly, Carter, because Andy mentioned the Carolina's failed experiment of bringing in 70 new guys. And I think there comes a breaking point where the roster overhaul just doesn't work. There's not enough culture and there's not enough familiarity. And you're really just throwing a bunch of strangers in a room and hoping against hope that come the first Saturday in September, they resemble a cohesive group. That strikes me as a fool's errand. So no, I wouldn't be concerned by the percentage. I think it's more along the lines of who you retain. And also, guys, and I'm interested in your impressions, and I know you've kind of piecemealed it in different pods, and we have too, but I think overall, the staff that he has assembled is pretty darn impressive. I mean, the last two additions in Nick Perry and Anthony Midget, you look at where they coached and who they coached for and who they played for. I mean, Nick Perry has 2 rings from his playing days at Alabama. I mean, think of the people he was around there. And then, Anthony Midget coached under Mike Vrabel, and he coached under Mike Tomlin, and he coached under Bill O'Brien. I mean, that's some coaching chops there. I'm impressed by the group he's put together. My only question would be, as we've mentioned, you have a first-time offensive coordinator, but I think that's mitigated somewhat by the fact that they brought in the old Wake Forest offensive coordinator as a consultant.
Yeah, I think the staff's fine. I know I'm not like over the top, like, oh my gosh, this is a home run staff. You mentioned some of the guys they worked with. I think you can look back and go, I mean, Tyler Bowen coach for James Franklin and Urban Meyer before coming here. Chris Marv coached for James Franklin and Mike Norvell before coming. Like, I don't know if that necessarily breeds success for these coaches once they get here. So I think when a coaching staff comes together, I think it's always initially like a little skeptical. People go, who's that? And then they give them a chance a little bit, and then we'll see how it plays out in the field. Because a lot of, Joe Rudolph was a home run hire.
Yeah.
And he didn't last long. And the 1 year he was here, it wasn't great. It didn't seem like a great fit. So, sometimes hires don't look good on paper and they end up being pretty good. So I always just kind of like, let's see how it happens. Let's see how it goes with the staff. Let's see how they work together. Let's see if the pieces fit, and then I'll judge it later. But I really don't like looking at these staffs right off the bat, because mostly I'm just judging based on familiarity. Have I heard of this guy? Does he have a long resume? What will we said about the guys that have followed Signetti every stop along
Yeah,
the
they've
way?
only coached at the group of five level.
They've only
yeah.
coached at the group of five level. They've just been with this one coach the whole time, and they're pretty dang good coaches. So I think you can find good coaches regardless of who they've worked for in the past.
Nice.
IUP.
The Crimson Hawks. The Crimson Hawks, Division II school in Pennsylvania. Yeah, I like the staff. The one thing, admittedly, that was surprising to me, and I think we talked about this on, like Teel said, we kind of pieced together the staff because it's been about a month. I think this was the podcast Andy was in his wine cellar in Richmond. I remember talking about this. Yes. You're in your wine cellar. No, I remember talking about I was surprised about the lack of on-field staffers from Penn State that did not come to Virginia Tech. But I think it comes down to, and you guys can piggyback on whatever you want to, I think it comes down to Matt Campbell wanted to keep a lot of those guys too. And Penn State, like you said, has a ton of resources where you can keep them in the fold. Like Justin Lustig is sticking around there, isn't he? So he's sticking around there. Terry Smith obviously is sticking around there. Anthony Poindexter wanted to follow Jim Knowles. So I don't think the cards necessarily lined up to the point that James Franklin would like it to bring maybe everybody that he necessarily wanted to bring on the field to Virginia Tech. Anybody can comment on that who maybe wants to.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to understand these coaches have options and they have career ambitions as well. Terry Smith, I think, has a lot of power at Penn State right now in the role that he's in under Matt Campbell as being a carryover coach previously. I mean, that roster obviously loved him. The players played their hearts out for him down the stretch. So I think he's in a really good spot. And you look at Poindexter, perhaps that's upward mobility. Perhaps he'll get a bit, the paycheck's probably nice at Tennessee too, but perhaps there's more of a path to he sees himself becoming more involved in the defense or more of a coordinator. Because, with James Franklin, he'd been passed over a couple times. For the coordinator job. They kept doing outside hires, and he continued to be the DC. So I don't know if that enters his thinking with that, but it was a pretty good staff he had at Penn State, and they did have options elsewhere.
You know what else comes into it, guys? Family.
Does that matter?
These people have
families?
Some people don't want to pack up and move, and I don't blame them. You have spouses and children involved, and you're talking about uprooting and new schools and perhaps new jobs for your spouse. That's a heavy lift. And sometimes staying put has its advantages for all concerned under the roof.
We even saw that to some extent at Virginia Tech. I mean, it's been confirmed now because he put it out there. Sean Quinn was going to stick around in a lesser role on James Franklin's staff. Now he's the defensive coordinator at Liberty. That's obviously a promotion, but does Sean Quinn want to move? Random example, but obviously can fit in anywhere in the country. But Teel, I'm dying to get your reaction on this. This happened last week, and I want to hear from the source itself, because obviously you're kind of all over this situation. We talked about it on the podcast last week. I've heard it talked about left and right on different radio shows, but obviously with the ACC moving to 9 games, Virginia Tech was going to have to drop a non-conference game. We've talked about it for 3, 4, 5 months now, that the potential for that drop game was to be James Madison. Now, obviously, it was going to have to be either JMU or VMI that was going to be dropped from the schedule. Because of the ACC's out-of-conference Power 4 requirement, you were going to leave Maryland, and because of the recent adjustment to the Old Dominion series, pretty sure the Monarchs were going to come to Blacksburg. So it was down to either hitching JMU from the schedule, or you could bump VMI and open up the James Franklin era with an ACC game. What are your thoughts on what happened with the JMU game next year? And do you see that ever being a game that ever pops up again on the schedule?
So many angles to explore here. Carter, I thought Andy used a great word when he described the 2026 opener between the Keydets and the Hokies. Uninteresting. It just is. I'm sorry, the rekindling of the old VMI Virginia Tech rivalry that was once played every Thanksgiving does nothing for me. And I'm as much of a traditionalist as anyone, given my advanced age. But you're talking about an FCS program that's had back-to-back 1-11 seasons. It will be nothing more than a scrimmage. And maybe that's what Virginia Tech wanted. They wanted to start the Franklin era with a win. But I'm sorry, bet on yourself. Be bold. You want viewers? Volunteer to play an ACC game in your season opener. The options would have been, there would only have been 3 options that Tech could have opened the ACC season with, given everyone else's obligations. They would have had to go to SMU or Miami or host Stanford. Those would have been the only 3. But my gosh, give me any of those other than a season opener against me.
How dare you disparage the military classic of the South like that? You're going to get some pushback in the comments and on YouTube on this one.
That's fine. Push away.
I think the bummer is that, like, Virginia Tech, assuming James Franklin gets the Hokies to where he wants them to be, and I mean, James Madison just made the playoff. Like, this would have been this would have had the potential to be a really good game. I mean, I know JMU's going through a coaching change as well with Bill Napier.
It's the right time to catch him.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's tough because I think so many people wanted this game to happen, and it's like, well, probably never going to happen now. Carter, I don't know. I mean, does JMU still want to play? I think
JMU would want to play the game.
Probably. I assume so. I don't know that Tech cares. And that's kind of the way I look at it. I don't know that James Franklin and that staff are seeking out a game against JMU. Know what I mean? And it's kind of a bummer because I think that would be a really cool game to have against 2 really good in-state schools that, last time they played, JMU won. Like, JMU just went to the playoff. JMU's been really, really good as of late. You might even say JMU's been the best in-state program in the last couple of years. And I think the Hokies should have played that game, but you can understand the way that James Franklin and the staff probably wanted to set up that schedule.
Also, we've been robbed of the Davy Belfort Bowl.
Oh, that's true.
Because he just committed there. He could have been coming back, taking aim at the Hokies in Lane Stadium. Alas, no more.
David, I can assure you that James Madison wanted to play this game.
Well, yes.
And I can also assure you that there are no Power Fours lining up to play JMU. And it's really frustrating to Matt Rohn, the athletic director, and his staff. Carolina is scheduled to play the Dukes, I believe, in 2028. I doubt that game gets played now that the ACC is moving to 9. And I've heard some people say, well, Virginia Tech just found out last week or the week before its ACC opponents and knew it was going to play 9 games. No. The ACC announced the move to 9 in September. And Virginia Tech knew right then that it was going to play 9 because that's when it started negotiating with JMU to get out of this game. I mean, Matt Rohn said it in Madison's release that he appreciated Whit Babcock being so transparent with them and moving as soon as the ACC made its announcement in September. So, please don't try to run this jive that, they would have had no time to adjust and they had no choice and they had to keep the VMI open. No. And the ACC loves week 1 good TV content that they would have given James Franklin versus an ACC team a really nice television window, and it would have drawn big numbers.
And that can carry you for a year. Look what the South Carolina game did for Tech this year in
Yeah.
terms of viewership, and the viewership dwindled the rest of the year, obviously with the struggles. But you could use that as a jumping off point. And honestly, I think if you want to play Miami at any point of the year, I might want to catch them in that first game where they're breaking in a new quarterback
probably
for the first time.
I wonder who that quarterback could be. We'll get to that in a little bit. But does it kind of feel like, I've heard it worded as a missed opportunity. I'm going to word it as a double missed opportunity, because the JMU game, not only I think would have, obviously there'd be some regional interest, but I think with them going to the CFP last year, there would be a little bit of national interest. On top of, if you leave the JMU game, again, you're playing an ACC game to open up the James Franklin era. So you lose out on the opportunity to play James Madison, and you lose out on the opportunity to maybe get Stanford and Blacksburg Labor Day weekend, or to go to Miami Labor Day weekend, which would be ratings galore for Virginia Tech and the ACC. Instead, you leave VMI on the schedule that could be relegated to ACC Network Extra, and then obviously you're going to be playing an ACC game later in the season. Does it feel like a double missed opportunity? Is that a fair way to word it?
Yes. Missed opportunity on several levels. Plus, you tell me, you guys have a better pulse of Virginia Tech fans. Who would they rather come to Lane Stadium and watch? What game is more interesting to them, JMU or VMI? Now maybe there is a certain segment, the Military Classic of the South. But, that's a game that hasn't been played since 1984. And they played that in Norfolk, at the old, in the old Oyster Bowl. So that's ancient history, and James Madison is what is now. It is the hottest program in Virginia, coming off of a CFP and coming off of a 4-year run as a FBS neophyte, the likes of which the sport has never seen. No team has ever transitioned to the FBS with the success that James Madison has had. And there they are, right up 81 in your neighborhood, and you're ducking them.
Maybe Virginia Tech was scared.
I mean, the argument is that they wanted an easier win, and I think it's something that's probably true, and probably something that if you're Virginia Tech, you would want to schedule it that way. This team was 3-9.
Yeah.
Like, no win is guaranteed for this program. I know they've upgraded the talent. The coaching staff's better. James Franklin's here. It's a dawn of a new day. You don't just flip the switch and automatically you're winning 9-10 games a year. I think it's going to take a year to kind of get used to things. And, we've seen the ACC schedules, not exactly easy on paper. We'll see how these transfers shake out on all these teams. But this is one that you can probably go in there and chalk it up as a W and not have to worry about it too much. I would hope not. They stole their coach to be a staffer on James Franklin's staff here, and VMI has not been good lately. So I think it's an easy win. It's a sort of a dip your toe in the water moment for James Franklin. And they'll get a big crowd at Lane Stadium.
It'll be such a boring game.
It'll be the opener. People will be excited to see James Franklin, and the game will be over by the end of the first quarter, if not earlier. And that's not interesting to me to cover, but I can understand Virginia Tech's viewpoint of why they would keep that.
Yeah, I understand both sides to it. If we're ready to move on, I want to talk about Indiana real fast before we hit the break. What do you make of what the Hoosiers did? We've talked about it ad nauseum the last couple of weeks, but I thought there was a chance that Indiana was going to beat Miami by, 2 touchdowns. It looked like maybe for a little bit it was trending that way, and then Miami gets back in the game, but then Fernando Mendoza shows off his Heisman moment in the postseason. What do you make of the Hoosiers' run and going 16-0 to win the college football playoff national championship?
Well, here's my question to the group, and I've been thinking about this since Monday night. Is this Indiana team going to join the 72 Miami Dolphins and the 76 Indiana basketball team as these icons and the last unbeatens of their era? In this age of the college football playoff and parity in the sport, where an Indiana and a Texas Tech can reach the CFP, are we looking at a time when unbeatens just aren't going to happen? And this 16-0 run was an anomaly, especially because we're trending toward an expanded playoff. I just don't know that we are going to see another unbeaten FBS team for a long, long time.
I think it will be tough, but I don't think it's impossible. And I wouldn't equate it to the NFL where, I mean, the NFL is really any given Sunday. And there's, 17 of those weeks now during the regular season. And, there's almost an advantage sometimes of losing one of those weeks and just get the pressure of the undefeated season off your back. I think you saw the toll that took on the Patriots that one year when they were trying to complete the perfect season. College is a bit less like that, where how many games during Indiana's season did it go in where it was truly like a coin toss type game? I mean, you'd have to think like 7 of their games at least during the regular season were just absolutely no contest going in. I mean, all their non-conference.
I mean, Old Dominion gave them a run for their money.
They did, but what was the line of that game? 20-something?
Probably.
They dropped Virginia. They're ducking Virginia in the non-conference. That could have been a pretty good game this year. But there are fewer games, I think, in college where it's going to be this can go one way or the other. And they kept hitting the point over and over. I mean, they were winning these games. They were tight games sometimes. They were winning them. So I think that's a very tough tightrope to walk to get to a perfect season. But I think it's more achievable than it is in the NFL. And, I'm trying to go back and look at the history of the BCS. Who was the last undefeated team before this?
LSU.
I mean, Michigan did it a couple years ago.
Okay.
Georgia did it the year before that. And we're talking 15-0. Indiana went 16-0. And I know there's another round of playoffs, but I think it's possible. I think it's more possible in college than the NFL.
I think the schedule also has to shake out the right way. Like you're in the Big Ten and you don't have to play a Michigan. Instead, you play Purdue, right? I'm just making something up. Like if the schedule shakes out a little bit there where you get a little bit lucky in some areas. But, I mean, what they did, and Indiana was the better team in every single game it played this season. And that's just a ridiculous statement. But it's what Curt Cignetti set out to do. And I think it's so interesting how he's got the JMU connections. He's got the IUP connections. I mean, this is a guy who's a former Saban assistant. His dad's a Hall of Famer. But he has turned around the losingest program in the country and had them win a national championship. And it helps when you've got a Heisman winning quarterback, who came from Cal and I think was just pretty good and has turned into this superstar. But the way they coach this team, and I was so impressed by it. Felt like every time I turned on TV this year, Indiana and Cignetti were out coaching the other team. And I think you saw that show up in the championship game against Miami, and the Hurricanes gave them a run for the money.
Hurricanes probably should have won.
They probably should have won the game, yeah.
But it comes
Missed
down
a field goal, block a punt for a touchdown.
Comes down to special teams.
Quickest way to win a football game. That's what Frank would say.
Block punt on punt safe, too. Like, when's the last time you've seen that?
That was a missed assignment.
Oh, my gosh.
The thing that's amazing to me is this is the most stunning program turnaround in such a short amount of time that I've ever seen. But it's not like Indiana was some Cinderella this season. Hoosiers in the movie, people are like, oh, the underdog from the small town. That's not how that story went. That Hoosiers team, the Milan team, was a juggernaut because they had the best player in the state and they just destroyed team. Like, they were awesome. This Indiana team is also awesome. They have the Heisman Trophy winner on their team. This wasn't some like little engine that somehow knocked off all the big teams. Like, they're as good as these other teams and we're better than them all season. So I think the way we look at this and think about it, and people are making all sorts of excuses now. Oh, they're the oldest team ever in college football. It's like they aren't. They were like the 16th oldest team this year. Oh, Mark Cuban paid all these players. It's like, yeah, you paid all the JMU players to come to Indiana and win this title. Come on now. People are trying to wrap their mind around it and come up with excuses for why Indiana is now good. They were smart at what they did with the portal. They had enough financial backing to set it up, and they have a great coach in Cignetti. I mean, they did everything right. And I think it proves that, any program could do that if they have everybody pulling in the right direction, have the right coaches, and are making right decisions and stuff.
Guys, here's how buttoned up Cignetti had this team in 2025 and into January. Number one, they had no turnovers in 3 playoff games. None. They had 5 takeaways, 2 block punts. Their only lost fumble of the season, the only one, was in the season opener against Old Dominion.
That's right.
They then played 15 consecutive games without a fumble. And I saw an ESPN Stats and Info tweet that that's the longest stretch of snaps in more than 20 years for an FBS team to go without a lost fumble. It's just remarkable. And they were the second least penalized team in the country, although I thought that flinch by the offensive lineman down on the goal line late was going to be disastrous for them, because they were going to get another first down and be able to, because it was 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1. I forget which down it was, but they were going to get a first down, and then they were going to be able to essentially kneel it out. And then they have to kick the field goal, which gives Miami a chance to go down and get a touchdown. And if Carson Beck doesn't underthrow that kid, they darn near would have had it.
Did you guys see the pictures and videos of downtown Bloomington Monday night, by the way?
Ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
I saw a crowd at Assembly Hall that was losing its mind watching that. I always love those videos of people in the basketball arena watching on the jumbotrons, like what's coming, and then they just go crazy about it. I mean, it's amazing for a school like that has been so starved for football success over all the years. I mean, they showed Indiana had, I think, 3 bowl wins in its history, and it had 3 postseason wins this year. Its last one was in 1991, the Copper Bowl. It doesn't even exist anymore. Somebody's like, they won the Copper Bowl shortly after the collapse of the Soviet Union. That's the last time they won a bowl game. And now they're national champions. I mean, it's crazy.
It's insane. It's insane. David, as a Virginia Tech graduate, give us like a 20-second summary of what downtown Blacksburg would look like if Virginia Tech won the national championship.
I was more so just thinking about, Andy mentioned the bowl records. I mean, Virginia Tech beat Indiana in the 1993 Independence Bowl.
Independence Bowl.
I mean, like, Virginia Tech fans remember what Indiana was like in the 90s because it played Indiana. And like I think it's hard for everybody to wrap their head around Indiana accomplishing this. But it's what happens in this new era of college football. And the SEC, for all of its might, well, SEC has not won the last 3 national championships. The Big Ten has, and it's been 3 different teams. And Indiana has gone about this such the right way too. I loved watching just the videos of the Indiana players just interacting with the students and the fans, because you can tell how much it means to that community. You asked about what Blacksburg would look like. Dude, it would be bonkers.
I'm thinking like shoulder to shoulder from PKs all the way down to like Cabo.
Did they have a crowd like that show up after they upset Ohio State that one year?
I think that
so.
sounds
well,
right.
There was
yes.
also a good crowd, I think, when Tech men's basketball won the ACC championship in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But,
the bad part about that was it was over spring break, so you had a limited crowd here.
But I mean, it's Indiana is accomplishing things. Yeah, it's funny. I saw a tweet. I think it was from a Tennessee fan, and it was like, man, Indiana has been so bad at football for so long, and then gets one coach who wins everything that I've ever dreamed of winning, and I would give an arm and a leg for it.
Tennessee's won a national championship. What are they talking?
Well, you're talking probably a 20-year-old tweeting that, but my point stands. There are people around the country that would love to be in that position, and it's Indiana of all teams, and I think it just makes the story even cooler.
You mentioned that 93 Independence Bowl game. Indiana went 8-4 that year. Virginia Tech, that was one of the better years for Indiana.
Yeah.
After that, they didn't win 8 games in a season again until 2019.
Oh my gosh.
And then 11-2, 16-0 the last 2 years. I mean, just remarkable turnaround. Words fail me to describe the turnaround for this program.
Teel, did you cover that Independence Bowl in 1993?
I did not. Not sure where I was that postseason. if anywhere. But no, I was not intrigued. My only Independence Bowl was Frank Beamer's final game, and in 2015. Can I throw another question out to the group?
Absolutely.
And just flip it to the Miami ACC side. The ACC in the regular season was meh at best. 7-19 against Power 4 peers. Lucky to get Miami in the CFP. Produced a very wonky league champion in 5-loss Duke. But then in the postseason goes crazy. And it wasn't just Miami reaching the national championship game, although that was a huge part of it. The ACC goes 9-5 in postseason, goes 4-0 against the SEC. But then on the flip side, it only has 2 teams in the final top 25 in Miami and Virginia. How would you assess ACC football 2025?
Alive and kicking. I think a lot of people have been writing the death notices of the ACC, and for good reason. The ACC doesn't give it a whole lot of hope that this will be a viable league going forward. But you have to like how it performed in this postseason. When we rip on the ACC when they go, what was it last year, 2-9?
2-11
in bowl games. You have to praise them when they do well. And this isn't the SEC. You don't get to have it one way and the other when the results don't go your way. You mentioned 2 teams in the final top 25, and it kind of speaks to how these teams are ranked all season. And I don't think it matches with reality when you see how some of these SEC teams do in the postseason. It's almost like the SEC sets it up, or the voters set it up for the SEC in the preseason. They have all these top teams ranked, and then they play each other, and they're like, oh my gosh, they beat Missouri. Missouri was ranked. They beat Tennessee. Tennessee was ranked, and these teams aren't that good. But it gives them the illusion of all these top 25 wins, and oh my gosh. And then you forget that, Florida State, a very pedestrian team in the ACC, and not being kind by saying that, just absolutely crushed Alabama in the opener. We just forget about that by the end of the, that was the opener. We don't count that one. It's like, maybe that should be factored into some of these discussions. So, I wrote a column this week saying Miami's run sort of, speaks to the viability of the ACC as a football conference, not only because it shows that it can be done. That was the complaint by Clemson, Florida State. We don't have the resources to compete with these SEC schools for a national championship. Well, Miami punched a hole in that. I mean, yes, you can. They're pretty well resourced, and they used it right. But not only that, but they're rewarded for it. With all this money they're taking in by themselves for going this far in the postseason, for the viewership numbers that they're going to have, it's going to be so advantageous for Miami relative to its competition in the ACC financially, that I think Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, if it can ever get its act together on the football field, I think you look at that and you go, man, we could stay here and be pretty successful in the ACC. I don't think you necessarily need to chase after an invitation to another league. It'd be nice if they got it, and they'd certainly have to consider it. But I don't think it's the ACC has given those schools another option. You can stay and still be pretty successful within this league.
You got something, David, on this?
Yeah, I think it's.
Good.
I think the trend line is very encouraging at season's end as you look toward 2026 and beyond. Miami, I think, is for the most part positioned to be consistently good. Fascinated to see what Chad Morris brings back to Clemson on the offensive side. I have serious doubts about Florida State and Mike Norvell being able to flip it, but Virginia Tech and James Franklin, Tony Elliott in Virginia, coming off the first 11-win season in program history, its highest end-of-year ranking since 1995. A lot of player retention, a lot of athlete acquisition in Charlottesville this offseason. I think they got a chance to be good again. Alberto Mendoza heading to Georgia Tech. Can he keep the Yellow Jackets on the winning side? So I think there is a lot of optimism as the ACC looks ahead.
You get this. I was just looking.
Mm-hmm.
How many teams, Carter, would you guess in the SEC finish with at least 9 wins?
This season?
Mm-hmm.
6, 7.
It was 7.
7.
How many teams in the ACC would you guess finished with at least 9 wins?
4 or 5?
7.
7, okay.
And
You're factoring in bowl wins too?
Yes, I mean, just final record.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the SEC had some really good teams that made the playoff. I mean, a lot of them had double-digit. They were right around 10 wins. Vanderbilt had 10 wins. But at the same time, the ACC had a lot of teams right around 9. And I think this postseason showed that the gap is not as wide as everyone thought it was. That Miami went into Texas A&M and won. That's an ACC team beating an SEC team.
That's because the Aggies faced the grind of the SEC season. They were so worn down by the postseason that the ACC just came in, just pushed them over because they were so tired. Just beat them like that.
Yeah. Must be. My point is that the ACC has pretty good teams. And you look down this list, and not every single team in the ACC that finished with 9 wins was a world beater, surely. But SMU, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Wake, Duke, they all finished with 9 wins. And then you've got Virginia and Miami. And I believe most of those teams played, if they played SEC team in the bowl game, they won.
Mm-hmm.
And just look at Virginia beating Missouri. Missouri, this team that, Missouri's so good in the ACC. Virginia, I mean, it wasn't that good of a game because Virginia won handily. I just think people, the preseason narratives get out there, and it's like, here's how college football is going to be this year, and you get to the end of the season, and it was much different than you thought, but you can't really shake those preseason narratives.
Yeah. SMU beat a ranked Arizona team in the Holiday Bowl. And that's a school I didn't mention where the trajectory is certainly up. And Kevin Jennings says he's coming back. And I think that's a team that certainly will be, preseason top 3 or 4 in the conference as we screw up our preseason poll down in Charlotte at the kickoff.
All right, we got to get a break in here real fast. So with that, let's step aside and hear from our title sponsor, State Farm, here on Talking with Teel. Switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on the lights. We switch TV channels. Some of us switch partners while square dancing. Well, that's a stretch. But what's not a stretch is how you can switch and save with State Farm. In fact, a group of State Farm agents that support TechSideline.com can switch you over to State Farm so you can start saving today. These State Farm agents and their team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. Check out Tech Sideline for the agent in your area. It's easy to switch and save. Just give them a call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And welcome back to episode 19 of Talking with Teel, presented by State Farm. Another something that I am absolutely dying to get into on this podcast that I've been waiting for a couple of days. And I know, Andy, you're chomping at the bit, Teel is chomping at the bit, and David is chomping on the bit. We talked about a couple weeks ago this whole quarterback situation with the Washington quarterback. That was not the last of it. So Duke is currently suing its ACC champion quarterback, Darian Mensah. He announced on the last possible day to do so his intention to enter the transfer portal. Now, he is currently in a lawsuit with Duke and the state of North Carolina, Durham County. It seems like if he does end up entering the portal, which he did officially last night, he is going to go to Miami. But lo and behold, there is a lawsuit in between the school and their starting quarterback from this past year that won an ACC title. What do you make about this whole thing that's currently going on? And what does this possibly mean for the future of college football when you look at this current situation?
This is the mess that college football has created for itself by failing to enact collective bargaining and clearly enforceable contracts. Now, it turns out that the DeMond Williams contract with Washington was enforced. I'll be fascinated to see how the Duke Mensah Miami dynamic unfolds. And from what I've been able to read, and I don't have any of my own reporting here, this is based on Sportico and ESPN and Yahoo. But Mensah is in the portal, but by contract is obligated, because he signed a 2-year deal with Duke, that he now has to submit to arbitration as to whether he can move and whether he can regain his name, image, and likeness rights, which Duke, under contract, now owns. And it's a fascinating situation. The original judge that this case went before recused himself because he's a Duke basketball season ticket holder, which I found amusing, but also absolutely appropriate. But I don't blame Duke in the least. I do blame Mensah and his representation somewhat, because it was just a week earlier that they made a big deal of, oh, we have this great 2-year deal with Duke, and we're glad we signed it, and we're going to run it back. And then at the last possible minute, they pull the rug out and say, no, not so much.
Okay, so if somebody signs a contract somewhere, they publicly state that they want to be at this place, they reaffirm that commitment, then a better opportunity comes along at Miami that they want to jump at and take that. We're against that. How is this different from what Manny Diaz did? Temple coach for 2 weeks, signs a contract. Temple's where I want to be. I want to be the head coach here. This Miami opportunity comes along. Actually, I'm going to jump ship and go there at an inconvenient time for Temple. What's the difference between these two situations? They're both under contract.
Because Temple, Andy, didn't want to hold Manny Diaz to that contract. And Temple received a buyout from Miami for that contract.
So it's just a matter of buyouts then.
Yeah.
Because they structure, you look at some of these contracts that they have, they're so incredibly one-sided. And you see Duke arguing like the damage, if he were to leave, is irreparable. We can't even put a dollar figure on the damage of this. Like, come on now. There's a dollar figure. Find it. I think that's where this thing ends up eventually. Is Miami will end up paying them $4 million, whatever it is. Mensah will play quarterback there. But there's always a level of hypocrisy in this whole thing. And to Manny Diaz's credit, I haven't seen a whole bunch of quotes from him out there being like, this is an outrage and he signed a contract. To me, it feels like the exact same situation. As Manny Diaz signed a contract somewhere, saw a better opportunity for a better payday at a school that was bigger than that. Miami, same school in this situation. And he took that opportunity and they compensated Temple for him to leave. And he went on to this other place. It feels like this is the same situation, even though, the way that these, pseudo contracts that they've written doesn't have a specific buyout clause or something like that. And that, again, it goes back to the original sin of this whole thing, is that this is a bad system that they've set up with not real contracts. It's a half measure.
Yeah.
Not to sound like Mike Ehrmantraut from Breaking Bad here, but they took a half measure when they needed a full measure on this whole thing. And they're paying the price on this whole thing because they're not setting up these contracts to be, somebody was going to find a loophole in it.
Sure.
And they're driving a semi-truck through that loophole. This is sort of the way progress is made with labor disputes over the history of, the powers that be don't give up their power willingly, right? Like free agency in baseball came through lawsuits. Free agency in football came through lawsuits and collective bargaining. And they have to get to this point in college before I'll even feel any sense of sympathy for some of these schools.
Yeah, and Andy, you mentioned that there will be negotiation and that Miami will pay some sort of buyout to Duke. The interesting part here is, under the terms of the house settlement, that buyout that Miami would pay Duke would count against its cap. So let's say Miami pays Duke $4 million and then wants to pay Mensah $6 million. That's a $10 million hit on its cap. Does Miami want to spend half of its rev share on one athlete?
I would believe that's problematic if I thought the cap was a thing. I don't think it exists. I mean, they say it exists and that, oh, this is how much we can pay with revenue sharing. But the way that they're structuring all these third-party NIL contracts is kind of like it was the old way. I mean, if we're thinking that this, oh, man, they're doing this with a $20 million roster. No, they're not. It's a $35 million roster. Like they are finding ways, the top schools and the ones that are really competing are finding ways around this. And Virginia Tech will too, I would imagine, under James Franklin, if it wants to be competitive. Because I don't believe that the cap exists in any kind of real meaningful way.
Can I raise a point about your? Go ahead, yeah. I don't mean to.
Well,
I know you haven't got no word
I was
in
just
here.
going to say it. I compare it to you need buyouts, and I compare it to honestly what international or what soccer is like professionally, where there are transfer fees, and if somebody wants to leave, if Chelsea wants to buy a player from Barcelona, there's a transfer fee. Chelsea pays Barcelona a fee for the player and then signs a contract. I mean, you need some sort of situation like that. And what happens is if you say, well, the way it would work in college football is somebody comes up through the lower levels and plays at, say, William & Mary and is really, really good. And Alabama comes in and wants that player. William & Mary gets a fee for developing that player and doesn't just get stolen. You need some sort of system like that where it's not just a player signs a contract and then decides I don't want to be here anymore and leaves, because that's not how the real world works. Because there's a fee usually, like the Manny Diaz thing. Like I wonder if Miami, with the whole Miami Temple Manny Diaz thing, clearly Miami paid a buyout for Manny Diaz. Mm-hmm. If there was a buyout that Duke said, hey, this is the buyout you have to pay. If Duke was getting some of its money back, I think it would feel a little bit differently. But I think part of it's the investment. You can't really make that up in the way that college football is currently structured. If that makes sense.
Yes,
well, I think that's how it ends, because he can't go back.
Yeah.
He can't walk back into that locker room at this point. And
Artemon Williams went back.
And I think it's going to be a disaster. I think if he doesn't perform adequately, that it's going to be thrown in his face immediately, and he'll lose the trust of the locker room if it's not already gone. The Mensah thing is even more so, where like he has a school picked out.
They are literally suing. They are literally suing.
Yeah, and they actually did sue him, and this is going to get ugly in court. I just don't think you can go back, and I think Duke is already looking at other quarterbacks.
The San Jose State guy.
San Jose State guy.
Yes, I think there's no going back on this one. I don't think you can return.
Can I raise a point about Manny Diaz? And then I want to go back to the whole Duke roster situation. This is an upper echelon problem throughout all of collegiate athletics, and everybody knows it. To your Manny Diaz point, technically it's legal for Miami to hit up Manny Diaz when he was currently employed at Temple. Is it currently legal for Miami to hit up Darian Mensah when he's under contract at Duke? He wasn't in the transfer portal. There's the bigger problem to me. Obviously, tampering is a big thing across collegiate athletics, but Darian Mensah was not in the transfer portal. Like, it was legal for Miami to hit up Manny Diaz when he was employed at Temple. It's not for Miami to hit up Darian Mensah when he's at Duke.
I feel like tampering is a professional sports term used for players under contract to prevent other organizations from officially like back channeling them or talking to them. There are so many third parties that I don't think Mario Cristobal had to call up Darian Mensah to do this. He probably had Uncle Luke.
Agents.
He probably had Uncle Luke do it or something. No, they had agents call up these players for sure. It kind of feels like this is just part of the game, right? I mean, Duke took Mensah from Tulane.
No,
Cooper Barcade is leaving after this year. He was at Harvard before this. Like, Duke big time those schools. Now Miami is big timing Duke. So I have a hard time feeling too much sympathy for these schools. Like, well, we rightfully took these players. I know it was a different situation, and they went into the portal, then they got them. Although if you ask some Tulane fans, I think they would probably allege some tampering in that whole deal. So I don't think there are any innocents in this whole thing. So I have a tough time finding sympathy for the schools that are whining the most about this.
There's always a bigger fish.
Well, yeah, and so how do you put a capper on that, Teel, then? I mean, obviously tampering is going to exist, but like, how do you fix this is the best way to word it?
Well, there has to be centralized leadership, centralized government of the enterprise. And we don't have it. And we're not going to get it because Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti and Jim Phillips are not going to give up their power that they have in their respective conferences. And that goes for Brett Yormark at the Big 12 also. But without centralized governance, where you have a commissioner who can punish a franchise or a program for tampering, or make sure that contracts are enforced, or guide collective bargaining, it's just not going to happen. And this is what we're going to get. Yes, Duke big time Tulane and getting Darian Mensah, but Darian Mensah, to the best of our knowledge, was not under a multi-year contract at Tulane. And Darian Mensah and his lawyer, Darren Heitner, did not make a big deal on social media about what a great contract it was and how they were glad to be fulfilling its terms and how they were running it back. This is it's unique thus far, but I'm sure we'll see many more instances like it until college sports figures it out. And I wouldn't hold my breath on that process.
I think I would retire the term "run it back." I think it's run its course on this whole thing.
How would you announce it?
I don't know. Back, maybe?
Well, that's the thing. He literally announced he was coming back 2 weeks prior to it, so back maybe.
There needs to be, like, I'm not an employment lawyer or anything like that, and I'll put that out there because somebody will comment in the comments. Like, there's more to this than just saying it's this simple, but there's such cognitive dissonance from the argument of the schools that are like, we're signing you for your NIL rights. This isn't pay for play. Don't even call this pay for play. Do not say that we are paying you to play here. That's the wrong term. This is not a pay for play deal. And then the player goes, well, I want to go play somewhere else. And they go, are you out of your mind? We're paying you. Like that. This is again why the system needs to be overhauled. And I feel like the NCAA has dragged its feet on this, and the NCAA is the schools. Always remember that. It's not some, group that's out there deciding this whole thing. It's the schools themselves. I mean, how many years of lawsuits have we had with this thing? How long has it been since Ed O'Bannon sued the NCAA about this stuff? They've had over a decade to fix this, and they haven't done that. And they sit here and they cry about the situation. They go to Congress begging for an antitrust exemption that they probably don't deserve. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court is telling them that they're running illegal businesses, and they keep getting beaten in court. Like, there needs to be some sort of leadership that steps up, that comes to a more permanent solution, something that probably more resembles employment, or at least it faces the fact that this is a minor league sports endeavor and should treat it as such. And until they do that, I think they're going to be stuck in this limbo where somebody will constantly be, Raptors testing the fence, like in Jurassic Park. Like, is this okay? Can we get through here on this part? And somebody will continue to do it whenever there's an opportunity.
You mean like maybe Alabama basketball playing an athlete this weekend who has signed 3 NBA contracts and competed in the G League, and who got a very friendly TRO from a Tuscaloosa courtroom so he could be eligible immediately?
I have more of a problem with that than this other football stuff.
Yeah, I have a problem with that too.
Yeah, that is a ridiculous situation. And there are so many eligibility things right now, because you factor in the JUCO stuff, and you factor in people wanting to be able to play 5, and there's no leadership at the top to smooth any of this over. But the Alabama stuff is bonkers, because this guy, I mean, I saw somebody tweet last night. It's like, well, don't worry, man. When Virginia Tech gets Hunter Couture back, Tech will pick it up, and Kevin Aluma will come join him.
Gerard Evans, bring him back.
I mean, it's just like, what is the limit? There were parameters set, and the parameters have continued to be broken, but there's nobody cracking back down on it. Like there's no backbone. There's no structure. It's been broken. The loopholes have been poked, and now everybody's kind of just in free fall.
Yeah, the thing with Mensah, too, just to wrap it up, I don't think Duke ever thought they were going to prevent him from leaving. I mean, that's already been struck down in court multiple times. But I do think they're trying to recoup their money, and they should be able to recoup their money. So we'll see how that shakes out. The Alabama basketball situation, I don't know a ton about that. But yeah, 3 professional contracts, and I guess he had another year of eligibility, and they're going to let him play? That's crazy. Middle of the season, too. Middle of the season. Right. We're in the middle of the season.
They picked up a free agent in the middle of the season.
Exactly.
He got drafted and then was in the G League. And he's going to come back and he's going to be out of eligibility like at the end of the year. Like if technically he plays, that will be his final year of eligibility. But it's like you're allowing somebody who played in professional leagues in the U.S. to come in. They've got stuff set up for, of course, players coming in from overseas. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you're opening up this whole can of worms. And the Mensah stuff I go back to, if organizations, schools got paid when somebody poached their players, I think everybody would feel a lot more comfortable. But then you have to admit that you're paying players, and schools don't want to do that because, of course, it's not pay for play, even though it is. So it's this cycle that we will continue to live in. Ooh.
I was dying to talk about the Mensah stuff, so I'm glad we got through that. I'm going to throw a buy or sell at you guys real fast. It's a little bit out there, but, watching Indiana do what they did on Monday, it does make you wonder if you're a Virginia Tech fan. Buy or sell, very lofty. We'll start with you, Teel. James Franklin, in his time at Virginia Tech, will take the Hokies to the college football playoff before he departs Blacksburg, whether it be for another job or retires in 10 years. Buy or sell to the Hokies CFP under James Franklin?
100%
okay.
buy.
All right.
I think that's a low bar. All you, especially with the playoff, it's going to expand. Get to the ACC championship game with 2 or 3 losses, and chances are you're going to be in the college football playoff.
I'd flip it, and I'd say if he doesn't, I'd consider it a failure. Because I think with the resources, I mean, things go into at least 16 teams. Let's be honest about this, and hopefully not 24, because that's the most ridiculous thing I've seen is the 2014 proposal by the Big Ten. But can you be top 16 at Virginia Tech? Absolutely. They should be able to compete for the ACC title. And even if they don't win it, you can get in, as Miami showed this year, as SMU showed the previous year. I think getting in, it's a question of how far can you advance would be my bigger question about that.
I'll buy it. I think James Franklin put together really good teams. Top, not just top 10, but top 5 teams at Penn State. And how long does it take him to do something like that at Virginia Tech? I'm not sure, but he's got the financial backing. It's not like the Hokies are not investing. And if they go about it the right way, I'm sure it's possible. And making the college football playoff is achievable. It's within grasp. And to Teal's point, that might be somewhat of a low bar, because I think if James Franklin can go do exactly what he did at Penn State, you're talking about a program that just, that's kind of what Tech does. Again, win 9-10 games. We're far away from that, don't get me wrong, but if James Franklin can do exactly what he did at Penn State at Virginia Tech, you're talking about a program that is back in the conversation again every year.
Indiana just won the national title. The world is turned upside down right now. Anything is possible for any team, and any school that says that they can't do it where they are is just making excuses at this point for either their lack of investment in the roster or just the lack of ability of their coaching staff.
I would also say this, Carter. Virginia was a win away in the ACC championship game from going to the playoff.
Yeah.
It's not out otherworldly. Like, it's possible.
Yeah. No, it should happen with what they're investing into it, for sure. I do want to slip one more basketball question in here. I did not want to lead off with this because I wanted to get to some other stuff, but looking at the ACC as a whole in hoops, Teel, how many are getting in the NCAA tournament from the league this season?
Well, we talked earlier about my friend Patrick Stevens and his bracketology. Guys, this morning he has 10 ACC teams in the field, and that includes Stanford.
Wow.
and then he has Stanford and NC State in Dayton as two of his last four. He's got 10 each from the Big Ten, SEC, and ACC.
Oof.
I think the ACC will get at least 7, and I would think probably more.
Yeah, I think 7 or 8 is probably the magic number. But, man, I would love to see a guy like Ibuka Hikori in the NCAA tournament, man. Like, you talk about made for March. The ACC's been pretty good right now. I mean, NC State went and picked up a big win at Clemson the other day. It'll be interesting to see after we get through this weekend of really bad winter weather, kind of how Hokies have Duke at home next weekend. That's a big opportunity. There are a lot of ACC teams that are sitting right around the bubble or right on the right side of the bubble.
Yeah.
The ACC had 4 last year? Barely?
4, and they shouldn't
they were
have.
lucky to get North Carolina into that thing.
Correct.
Incredible what a difference 1 year can make in this whole thing, and some programs investing a bit more money in their rosters.
Yeah. Guys, and Andy, you make the right point. I don't mean to keep us much longer. But when Andy says about investments in rosters, the previous offseason, 2 of ESPN's top 50 transfers came into the ACC. This season, 8 did. That's just one example.
Yeah, I mean, and I go back to, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Teel, where you were asking coaches on the ACC call about just more talent in the league. And I forget who it was. Maybe it was Steve Forbes. He's just like, follow the money, man. like there's more money, more teams are investing, and you see the results. And I think the league as a whole is just astronomically better.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the league, looking at the standings right now, like who's going to get in the tournament? Duke, yes. Clemson, yes. Virginia, yes. Miami, probably. NC State, we'll see. Virginia Tech, I think. Stanford, maybe. SMU, yes. Carolina, yes, probably. Louisville, yes. Syracuse, probably not. And then Cal, we'll see. So that's what, 11 teams I counted up right there as a potential. We'll see. We'll see. So,
well, and part of it goes back to what you did in the non-conference.
Yeah.
And we talked about this back in November, December, and Teel had the numbers. The incredible improvement from the ACC against SEC teams. Like, that's just one conference, of course, but when you are that much better in the non-conference, going from essentially winning few games to half, like, you will be in more conversations because your resume is going to be better come March. Like, Virginia Tech that's just one example, but Tech beat South Carolina on the road. Can you imagine if we're sitting here talking about how Hokies lost that overtime game in Columbia? That's not South Carolina's top 90, but that's not a great loss, right? The Hokies don't really have a blemish on their resume, and there are a lot of other ACC teams in a similar spot.
Just to wrap it up, Teel, what's your prediction on the forecast this weekend? Both in the 757 and I guess for us in Blacksburg over the next couple of days.
I wore white today, guys, because I think I'm going to be just covered in it this weekend. I'm just hoping I can get to and from Charlottesville on Saturday to see them name the court after Tony Bennett, number 1, and number 2, see the Tar Heels and Cavaliers play, because I think it's a fascinating matchup. Man, the folks at ESPN could do us all solid and allow them to move up tip-off a couple hours so folks could get on their way back home, because it's supposed to get pretty dicey here Saturday night and beyond.
Yeah, I'm sure Tiny Teal's excited for the snow, though.
Tiny Teal's excited to be home from school early next week.
I'm sure Emily is
Tiny
too.
Bitter is the same.
Saturday, 4:30.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, guys, Tiny Teel dusted us all in the bracket challenge.
Oh, I noticed that. Yes.
I was close.
Yeah.
I put up a fight.
Where do we pay the $100 buy-in? Was that what it was? Is that what we are at this point?
I may have slid her some cash when she announced that she won. She and David were the only ones who picked Indiana to win it.
Good for you. Good for you.
Between that and Grunkemeyer, man, I can't beat Tiny Teal, but I'm pretty good.
Picking chalk, picking the one undefeated team. Okay.
You could have.
I think we're projected to get I think it's like between 16 to 20 right now in Black Circle. When I checked
Yeah,
this
I think
morning,
it'll be
I
more-
would trust. I always trust Kevin Myatt, former
Okay.
Roanoke Times made to mine. He's saying 8 to 14 possible. It says current wording
Lovely.
leans heavily towards snow sleet with 8 to 14 inches possible. That was 22 hours ago.
okay.
Obviously, forecasts can change.
Sure.
But when Kevin is starting to say this could be a historic snowstorm, I tend to trust him on that.
Safe travels, Teel. Hope it goes well. I am unfortunately not going to Louisville this weekend because that would be driving through West Virginia in the snow would be kind of treacherous.
No,
so hope your travels to Charlottesville are smooth. And that's really cool that the Tony Bennett stuff that they're naming the court after him.
Yeah. Yeah. He wants no part of it, but obviously it is absolutely mandated.
Well, good podcast, everybody. We got into a lot of good stuff. I've been waiting for a couple of days to dabble into the script, so I'm glad we were able to get through it. Andy was here ready to roll 10 minutes early, tweeting at James Franklin. He was in his seat.
Front row,
Ready to
10
go.
minutes early.
we beat the weather. So anyway, Teel, really appreciate you hopping on as always. We look forward to chatting next week and safe travels, hopefully, to Charlottesville this weekend.
Thanks, guys.
For the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer David Teel, David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill saying so long from episode 19 of Talking with Teel, presented by State Farm. Be safe this weekend, and we'll talk to you very soon.